Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give everyone a few minutes to get into the room here before we get started.
Awesome.
All right.
We need some like inbound style pump up music
We
right
should
now.
have. I didn't even think of that, Emily. That's such a great idea.
There's next time. There's always
Next time. Next time.
Emily,
There's always another
you're in the
inbound.
beat booth, Emily. You could just beat us in here.
You really think I've got more skills than I do, Sam.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we've got a few people still coming into the room here, but we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us today here. We're at the Denamico Inbound Debrief. We have 4 of our awesome team members here who were just out at Inbound a couple weeks ago in San Francisco. They soaked up all the energy, all the releases. They've had a little time to think about things, and we thought, oh, it'd be fun. Let's just get the group together, kind of talk about what they learned and how they're thinking about applying that to a lot of our work here as we're in our partnerships. So let's just go ahead and kick it off. I'd love to just have each of you introduce yourselves, even though you probably look quite familiar to a number of the people joining us today. And then just share with us, if you could, one key takeaway or a personal insight from Inbound that's really sticking with you over the last few weeks. Brendon, would you go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Sophie. My name is Brendon Dennewill. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO at Denamico. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stick to just one. So for me, I had 2 big insights, in these sort of 12 days, since thinking about all the plus 200, updates and announcements that were made at Inbound. And mine are, not surprisingly, at a much higher level, which the 2 are: number 1 is the future is all about strategic leadership. And number 2 is that the future of business teams will be human plus AI. So I can talk more about that later, but those are my 2 big takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you. Kristin, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you. I'm Kristin Dennewill, co-founder and co-CEO with Brendon of Denamico. And for me, it was, to use Jeff Bezos's language, a day one moment. So if you're not familiar with his day one methodology or mindset, you can Google it you can Google what it means. But essentially, we are either in every business, we're either in day one or day 2. And day 2 is the beginning of the decline. And so day 1 is where we think, or we're in a mindset of if we're not trying to replace ourselves, someone else is going to. And so how do we continually disrupt our own companies to stay at the front of where the world is going? And we're in a very transformational time in the world in many regards, and especially with technology and AI. And so this isn't really about using AI to retrofit what we've done in the past. It's rethinking our businesses with the technology that's available today, including AI, of how we move forward from today on.
I love that. Sam?
Thanks, Sophie. I too couldn't stick to one. I have more observations. I thought there was an overwhelming interest in AI automation, but there was a lot of confusion around how we implement this. What does this really mean to us and our businesses? From an SMB perspective, they were really excited about the accessibility of enterprise level features at a reasonable cost. Enterprise clients were concerned about data governance and AI oversight. They're kind of in that past the wow factor, and now what does it really mean and how are we going to manage it? But there was one overall consistent theme, and this is even true for us here at Denamico. How do we not get left behind? That was how everyone was feeling after opening day.
Okay, we'll try to give something actionable here today, because we don't want anyone feeling overwhelmed from all this, right? All right, Emily.
Yeah. So I think I'm supposed to introduce myself as well. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, or I guess the other way around, who haven't had the pleasure of meeting me, perhaps. Goes both ways. No, I'm just kidding. But I am the I'm the VP of Client and Partner Success at Denamico. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, and I think one thing that really stood out to me at Inbound is that, you know, I think we all know that AI is going to transform at least like the way that we do business, and businesses as a whole. But that point could not have been more clear than it was, during Inbound. AI is going to transform your business. The question is more so whether the impact of that transformation is going to be net positive or potentially negative. But a lot of that is going to come down to how you adopt it, how early on you start adopting it, and whether that gives you a competitive edge or if you're competing to sort of keep up. And so I think takeaway for me: start early, start small, and iterate over time. And that the HubSpot tools give you a really great place to do that. A good point to jump off of. So more to unpack around that as we get into things today. But I would say that was a really big takeaway for me from Inbound.
That's awesome. Thank you. This is a good starting point. And yes, we've mentioned AI a couple times. We'll definitely get back to that later in our conversation too. There is so much hype at Inbound. I'm curious, a lot of things get released early too, right? So maybe things that we're excited about, but now as we kind of think about how are they really actionable, how do we implement them now? Is there anything that you felt like maybe they're not quite useful, quite there yet for the clients that we're working with, or anything that you thought was a little overhyped that now that you've sat with it, you're not like just jumping to get into? Emily, since we left off with you, do you mind kicking this one off?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing that was, for those who aren't familiar with it yet, one of the announcements that came out of HubSpot or out of Inbound was HubSpot's new commerce and specifically CPQ tools, and some of the changes to specifically the quote functionality inside of HubSpot. For existing customers, you will still continue to have access to the same quote tools that you might be utilizing today. But there is some additional new CPQ functionality that was announced that is pretty powerful. It has taken the HubSpot quote functionality that existed in the legacy platform and really built out some new and more robust use cases. So more robust quote building capabilities, especially as it relates to templates and what you're able to change and to edit within a template. Also giving your team the ability to take a template and edit certain parts of it. So a lot more robust functionality there. More flexibility in pricing, and quote approvals, expanding the quote approval that existed in the legacy tools to account for a lot more rules and logic. And also along with that came a closing agent, which is a really cool tool for prospective customers to be able to, or customers to be able to actually chat with an agent and ask questions about your price or what are your security credentials or something along those lines. And although the functionality that was rolled out was really exciting and quite frankly like a long time coming for them to get to that point, it stemmed from one of the acquisitions they made a little while back and rebuilding that into the HubSpot platform. But it still has a ways to go. It's come a long ways, but it's a good fit for companies that have pretty simple and small product or service catalogs, probably somewhere under 100 products or services that need to be supported. And for teams probably under 50, companies under 200 employees, once you start getting past that point, some of the features that were rolled out in the new CPQ functionality are going to start breaking down for some of what you'd probably like to see. And so although we took some big steps forward, I think we'll be sitting in a very different place a year from now. So for those that it is a good fit for, checked some really big boxes that have been missing, but for a little bit bigger teams with a little bit more complex needs or more products, probably still has a little ways to go.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That was kind of my takeaway as well as I walked through it, Emily, and particularly our client base. We're working with a lot of kind of complex processes and things. It's great that they're building that infrastructure behind the scenes, but I think yeah, definitely some limitations there still. Anyone else have something a little overhyped or something they think maybe isn't quite as exciting as the buzz it got right now?
I can weigh in on one thing. I don't think it was overhyped because I think it is a big deal, but the ability to connect ChatGPT, Claude, and now Gemini to your HubSpot, I think is amazing. And I believe HubSpot's the first CRM to enable that. But I think the reason it's not necessarily super useful to companies if they haven't already in a position where they've got high user adoption in their CRM. So the data is not yet in HubSpot to really leverage the value of having the AI attached to it. So I think, before I would worry about that, I would worry about how do we get user adoption at up to our whatever our expectation is, and make sure we've got the data, good data in the CRM to be able to really get the most out of connecting AI.
Mhm.
One thing I would add to that is, in addition to adoption of your CRM and having just solid HubSpot data, the other limitation is all the data for your business that lives outside of HubSpot. So if you've got, an ERP system that has a lot of customer data, for example, and maybe that ERP isn't integrated with HubSpot or isn't integrating and syncing all of the data from that system. The good news is I think some of the Data Hub, previously Ops Hub announcements and advancements specifically with Data Studio is going to unlock new capabilities to utilize that data with that AI tool. But I would add to that, Kristin, that I agree that the data needs to be there to really maximize that capability. And I think at least a lot of companies will have some other places they'd like to start bringing data in from to really see that maximized.
Yep, great point.
Absolutely. We've mentioned a few specific features as we've kind of gotten going here. And I know a lot of times after inbound, we'll have clients come back to us. Maybe they're excited about one specific feature. Maybe they've just seen, okay, there's hundreds of new things. Like, how do we help people determine what's relevant for them and if these are really addressing problems that they're facing today? Sam, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure, absolutely. When we spend time with our clients talking about optimization, so you've implemented your HubSpot, right? And now you're thinking about how can it do more for me? How can it be a growth driver in my business? We always start by asking the clients about their biggest business challenges, like this hype around AI. Let's do all this AI stuff. You really need to step back and ask yourself, what are you trying to solve? Right? That's what CRM should be focused on. What are the most important things to my business? And is my CRM aligned to help drive growth, meet those KPIs? So that's how we do it, is we back them up and start with, what are the business issues today, right? What are you trying to solve for? And to Emily's point about starting small, that's where you know where to apply AI as well, right? Say, okay, my biggest issue is my pipeline, right? So, okay, if I have a pipeline issue, what is the issue within my pipeline? And then the question is how are all these AI features going to help me solve to this issue? Rather than just throw something in there and say, this was supposed to fix this. So I think that's key to how we approach not just implementations or optimization services, but every discussion around HubSpot CRM. So we prioritize what solutions get rolled out based on what I'll call an impact and effort assessment. How much impact am I going to have and how much effort it takes? So once I've identified that, is it really worth it for me to do that? And that also lies in training and adoption, to Kristin's point. If you have low adoption and you're putting in all these cool new tools, but nobody knows how to use them or how they're really actually improving my day-to-day work life or my workflow, they're not going to get utilized. So it's really a step-by-step process. Business first, then what's the impact and effort assessment? then what's my likelihood of adoption, and how do I ensure that's going to happen? So there's also that readiness check, right? To the discussion we were just having around data quality or even data in there. So what is your data quality? Do I have the data I need to take advantage of this? Again, what's team adoption and what are my resources to drive this impact? What is my effort going to be on impact? So it's kind of our step-by-step process for getting to our clients.
Going to set it better myself.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Emily, do you have any thoughts here? Like if a specific product is of interest to someone, how do you kind of advise them through that?
Yeah. I mean, if a specific product or feature announcement is interesting to you, there's probably a reason why. And generally speaking, it's probably going to go back to either some goal or something that you've been talking about wanting to be able to do or launch as a business. And that could be why. It could be that there's a part of your process today that's really painful or manual, or there's like a lot of friction for whatever reason. And maybe there's a new feature or product that would help solve for or address that. And so if it's standing out to you, um, inherently it may already align with some of the things that Sam just mentioned. And so breaking down and just kind of validating, is this exciting, shiny thing just is the shiny new thing just exciting because it's a cool feature, or does it support our business goals or some challenges that maybe are getting in the way of our business goals? I think asking those questions can help ensure and validates that it's worth spending time on. And there's going to be real business impact. And then you can start getting into, okay, are we ready? Do we have the data we need to be able to take advantage of some new AI feature, or just kind of checking those boxes around, is our team ready for the deployment of something like this, can be important next steps to make sure that once you move forward with it, it's not only going to support your goals, but also you have the infrastructure either in your data or with your team to really maximize whatever feature you're getting ready to launch.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
how you
think
say that better.
It's definitely not better, just in addition to.
we did have one question too that I think relates to this in a way as we're talking features, and it really is there kind of a best practice or a benchmark of how many of these should people be trying to implement? Is there a number that we advise or that we push people to kind of try all these new features? How do we think about that?
I mean, I think I would say it depends on the size of the company, the size of the team that you have supporting the system, the number of users you have in the system. How many different features you can roll out for one company may be really different than what is realistic or reasonable for another. So I would say that depends, but I'm really curious to hear other perspectives, especially from people in different roles, around what they see and recommend.
Yeah, I would say I don't even think about the number of features and new releases. I think about more like, what are the pain points that we need to solve now, or the like Emily said earlier, the blockers to achieving our business goals, and then what is the function? Is there functionality that can help us do that? So I think, everybody's already very busy, so nobody's looking for new things to do. So if we're going to spend time on something, it has to be because there's a clear ROI to doing that. And so I always start with, the objectives or big pain points.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would, so the analogy that I've been using is, and of course, one of the reasons that we're, again, so excited like we are every year at this time, with our partnership with HubSpot, is essentially what they announced at Inbound was, okay, there were over 200 sort of updates and announcement, but whether the number is 200 or you want to categorize them into smaller groups, they've given us a whole bunch more arrows to put in our quiver. But again, you're only using one arrow at a time. So I think, Sam already mentioned this and Emily has already mentioned this, where again, it's what is the particular challenge that a client, because every business is at a different phase of growth and challenges. So what tools, which of these new tools can we pull in, and which of the existing tools do we need to prepare so that they can use the new ones? So instead of thinking about, how can we use all these tools, we now know that we have many more tools available to us to achieve the breakthroughs and remove the obstacles that each business is running into.
I think that's like a good additional point to what I said earlier as well. I don't start with the functionality. That's not how I start thinking about what should we incorporate it. We would also be remiss not to revisit our processes on a regular basis, because how we design those processes might change entirely depending on what functionality is available. So it's, this is why we talk a lot about continuous optimization of your CRM, and the idea of treating your CRM like a practice, like a yoga practice, where you're constantly trying to improve how you're using it with the end goal in mind of what are the results we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think maybe the big difference, after all the announcements that were just made by HubSpot, the thing that's going to be added to Kristin's point of process and how processes will change. It goes back to the very first thing that I said, is that the future of business teams is human plus AI. So every role, whether you're a marketer or a seller or you're in customer service or in operations, you're going to be using different tools and different AI agents and assistants to do your work in the future, and which of course then means that the process that you're currently using is going to change because of that, and it's for the better.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good things there we could unpack a little bit more. I think a few of you, though, alluded to this too, in bandwidth, right? We only have so much time that we can invest, and we really should only be investing our time in those areas that are addressing the problems. How do you help people kind of sequence these different new approaches? Kind of what comes first, second, third, in your recommendation when they are evaluating what's new, or even which problems should we be solving using this technology today? Emily, do you want to start us off here?
Sure. So I think the first step is kind of unpacking relevance. So what I mean by relevance is relevance to the goals of the business, the challenges of the business, all the things that we've been talking about, and what is most relevant to helping to solve or address the goals or the challenges that we have. The second then is potential impact. So if we now have a list of tools that are relevant to our goals and challenges, which of those do we think is either from a goal perspective, a challenge perspective, and then the tools that we're leveraging to address one of those, which is going to have the biggest impact? Readiness, as Sam said earlier, needs to be a really big part of that, because if it has the potential to have a big impact, but we don't have the things that we need to actually implement it successfully or to maximize the value we think and impact that we think we could get out of it, it's not as helpful. So relevance, impact, readiness, and then also where is there more urgency, right? Like if there are some things that are really relevant to our goals and challenges that we think can have a big impact, but some of these things have more urgency than the others because of something that's going on in the market, or something that would have a big impact on your customers, then that can be a helpful way to sort of work through, okay, what are the things that we really need to focus in on first? And then you've got a list that you can go back to talk about, okay, where do we go next, and sort of start mapping that into a backlog that you can continue to execute on maybe over the next 90 days or the next year.
Yeah, can I add something onto that? I completely agree with everything Emily said. And I would just make a note that there needs to be, it's best when there's some level of cross-functional stakeholders looking at these different things, because, as I mentioned earlier, I think of like, where do we currently have a lot of friction in our process? Because I oversee our finance, accounting function at Denamico. I particularly have friction with some of that. So for me, the CPQ functionality is like hot on my list, but I'm just one person. So anyway, having different, having cross-functional representation in terms of evaluating where's their friction, where are their opportunities here, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think too, really focusing on some wins. As Emily was talking about urgency and she was talking about impact and effort and readiness. Looking for some quick wins helps the team, right? We're now doing another thing and we haven't even figured out what we already have. So finding some quick wins, whether it's in the financial realm or the sales realm or the delivery realm or service, really helps the teams get energized and to avoid burnout. So as you're adding to your list and kind of balancing out all of those things we've talked about, just staging some quick wins and then building out a larger plan to roll those things out. We take that approach in our HubSpot optimization services where we look for some really quick wins in the beginning and then we plan out a year because that gets all of our clients and all of their team members are really excited about what's happening in the optimization services and gets them bought in. And then we really focus a lot on change management here, which focuses on adoption and understanding the change and being aware of the change and having the desire for change, all those things combined with training and support. So whatever we're rolling out is sticky and we can't ever forget that because rolling something out that people don't use, love, adopt, or energized by, it just goes by the wayside. So those are two things that I might add to this conversation.
I love that. And that's so important and kind of ties to the next thing I was going to ask as well, which if you're not really solving these real problems for people and creating that value there, then it's just something else they have to do or something else they have to learn, right? But if you're really tying it back, like all of you are saying, to what are we really trying to address now, it all starts to click for people more. And I guess I would ask on that note, is there anything that we've have maybe wanted to solve for clients in the past that either was really complex or maybe even not possible in the tool that is now with some of the features that were released at Inbound? Brendon, you want to kick this one off?
Well, I guess I was still excited about adding to Sam's comment about the change management piece because that speaks directly to my very first takeaway that I shared around strategic leadership. I think I think every leader who was at Inbound, no matter in what business they're in, they walked away thinking, how does our business strategy need to change? And we all know that it's going to change fundamentally. I think that's, Sam alluded to the importance of change management. I think, that has never been more important in business. So, we've been using change management for the adoption of all technology focused around CRM now for a few years. But the need for change management at the highest level where leadership is communicating to the entire team before any kind of adoption or implementation of any technology, be it CRM and or AI, they have to be very clear about the why, why we're going to be doing this, and that the change is going to be worth it. Because one of the things that I was thinking about as the 13,000 people who were at Inbound, you could argue that they're amongst they're 13,000 of the most innovative people in the country because they're going there to learn and figure out how they can be better in their jobs and in their businesses for the next 12 months until we all go back and learn some more. But the possibilities and all these exciting opportunities that were announced and that are now possible are not going to be possible without really strategic change management and planning. We've touched on the fact that processes are going to change. When processes change, and again, they're typically changing for the better, and especially now if you're adding AI as part of those processes. Those are all very, very exciting things, but we've never been through this kind of change before. So I think really making sure that you're thinking about, change management as you approach these is going to be really, really critical.
That is so important. Sorry, I didn't catch that you were chiming in there. I'm glad you went there, Brendon.
All good.
Um, okay. So taking us back to some of the problems though, are there things that we have tried to solve for clients that we're excited about that we think are easier or maybe more possible now with some of the specific product releases from Inbound? Sam, maybe you want to start us here?
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to call him.
Okay. Good
So
deal.
this is great. We do a lot in the manufacturing, architectural and engineering construction space, industrial manufacturing product suppliers. And I was really excited about a couple of things that truly are becoming much easier or have even been made possible by what we saw out at Inbound. First, account-based selling and complex stakeholder management. This applies to everyone, but particularly those industries. The enhanced deal pipeline now supports multi-decision maker sales cycles, giving teams far better visibility and control. And that's something they haven't had. Second, long sales cycles. These industries have months, if not years, in their sales cycles. So the new Loop marketing playbook, which we honestly haven't spent too much time on here and probably should, creates an always-on dynamic nurture system, right? And it's not just marketing, it's not just sales. I think the most transformative thing that came out and maybe wasn't hyped enough is sales and marketing have to work in that loop. It's a union, a continuous union now. And we've been saying that forever, but now with customer agent and prospecting agent, we actually make this possible and put the lift in the right places, the right nurturing, bring up sales ready leads, and keep a constant contact with our customers. And that's really hard in long sales cycles. Third, territory management and lead routing. Advanced automation now leverages HubSpot's teams, custom territory properties, and workflows to route leads automatically by region, by zip code, other rules that you have within your system. That removes manual handoffs and gives clear pipeline visibility, which is really hard in those situations where we've got regions, we've got 5 business units within those regions, we have 27 offices within there, and we need visibility to that entire thing, and we need those leads to go to the right person at the right time and no replication, so we're not making fools of ourselves showing up and putting 2 bids in that don't match to the same customer. So I'm going to give you an example. There's a Midwest building products manufacturer who automated handoffs between estimators and reps across time zones. And so this is really cool. It was a lot of work, but made much easier by what just happened at Inbound, cutting response times dramatically and freeing their teams to focus on selling instead of doing all the admin work of how do I get this to him? When do we meet? How do I hand this off? So it's those simple things, right? It seems simple, but it was very manual before, very messy, and at the moment, aspirational. And now it's possible, practical, and scalable. So that's what comes out of going to Inbound.
I love it.
Mic drop.
Yeah, that's it. That's all, folks. Emily, you mentioned Data Studio earlier. I feel like this could solve a lot of things for clients, or is there anything there you want to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one that stands out to me. Excuse me. Data Studio just really gives you limitless potential and access to data without it having to reside inside of HubSpot. So Data Studio specifically gives you the ability to really like bring in and clean up any data, update data inside of HubSpot, or just import and use it for segmentation or automation purposes. So really a lot of different ways that you can access data from any tool outside of HubSpot, really. A lot of different like native connectors, but if you can get it into like a CSV format, then or like an Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, what have you, it really opens up the door to do a lot with that data, even if you don't actually bring it into your CRM. So it can kind of just live in that data studio, be utilized for segmentation or reporting, or for automation, but you don't actually necessarily have to go so far as to update your CRM if for some reason you didn't want to bring that all the way into your records. So that unlocks a whole laundry list of new capabilities. But another one that stands out to me is the CPQ stuff we were talking about, on and off for the last half hour. The new CPQ functionality makes it a heck of a lot easier to bring revenue in the door, regardless of how long or short your sales cycle is. That is true. And for a long time, I feel like we've been talking about the fact that you could go online and Tesla had found a way to make it pretty stinking easy for you to buy, a $60,000 car. But buying services from a professional services firm or buying a product from a manufacturing company has still been very complicated, takes a long time, a lot of sales intervention, a lot of sales conversations. And the CPQ functionality really just takes some big steps forward in starting to make it a heck of a lot easier for people to buy from you, for them to pay you. So I think that is going to be a game changer. I already mentioned, there's some limitations in who that's a good fit for today. But for those that are a good fit, it's some really, really big steps forward. And there's a lot more on that roadmap that I know is just going to continue to expand who it's a good fit for and expand the use cases that it's able to support. So those are two big ones that really stand out to me.
Awesome. Brendon or Kristin, anything before we?
No, well, I mean, maybe a little thing. Just to kind of add on to Emily's CPQ example, I think the other thing is wherever we have manual processes in our businesses, it's also, even if it's not really friction, it slows things down, and it also introduces the opportunity for errors to happen because it's a manual process. So the CPQ, we've been using HubSpot quotes for a long, long time. And in fact, we've had a couple clients say, oh, we don't have Sales Hub, but we want to be able to sell quotes, use that quote functionality because it was such a nice buying experience, like so seamless for the buyer to use that. So I think, as Emily said, for the businesses where that is a good fit, like you don't have an enormous number of products or service codes, having that functionality then integrated with whatever your accounting system is, like reduces so much manual processing time and should accelerate like when you get paid and cash flow, and there's just a lot of upsides in that.
Yeah, which Sophie, if I can add one thing that Kristin just alluded to, ultimately what we in HubSpot are always aiming to help our clients do is to improve the customer experience throughout the entire journey. And it's if anyone listening today can if you think about the last thing that you purchased, even for home, that was a bit of, let's say, a bigger ticket item. If you had to do multiple steps to buy something, whether it was a hot tub or an alarm system or you name it, if you had to sort of go through 3 steps just to make a payment, that is not a great way to start a relationship. And so I think everyone has been, a lot of businesses have been focusing on providing a great customer experience beyond the purchase, but the initial transaction is such an incredible opportunity to start off a good customer relationship. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about with CPQ and Commerce Hub, as it sort of continues to get stronger and stronger between now and this time next year.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. We have a few people on the call here. Some are implementing HubSpot, so they're new to HubSpot. Some are deeper into the optimization phase. Maybe they've been on HubSpot for years. When we talk a lot about having a solid foundation in place before you move on to kind of some of the more advanced features and things. And I think just to bring this back a little bit to some of the AI comments that we had earlier, where Sam, you were talking about people not wanting to get left behind, and then Emily, you mentioned, how you this experience can be either positive or negative for you and for your business, right? So when we think about people in those two different phases right now, what foundational things should they be thinking about to make it that positive experience and make it that you're not getting left behind, like you're laying the right foundation today to be able to use these new features that are going to help grow your business and drive revenue?
It's a really good question, Sophie.
Yeah.
It's like the $1 million question.
Yeah, yeah.
It could,
I mean, I
just a
think,
thing or two to start with.
yeah, I think one thing that we all know is that there are only so many things that you can take on at once, and AI is very overwhelming. So I think first is just gaining some general, like, foundational knowledge about how AI works. I think like just a little bit of AI knowledge can go a long ways in how the capabilities it unlocks for how you utilize it. And I think it goes back to kind of one of the first things I said at the start today, and that is when it comes to AI, start small. And then iterate over time based on what you learn from it and about it, what works and what doesn't work. And don't lose too much sleep over getting it right or wrong. Just start small and add things on incrementally. But the other thing I would say is that no matter what you do with AI, it's going to require access to data in order for it to be impactful. And so thinking about, where does our data live? Is it clean? How could we improve our data cleanliness? How can we have a more holistic look at our data as a company? All of those things are going to be really good foundational things to start thinking about and start looking at that are not going to hurt you as you continue to implement it moving forward. But I think at the end of the day, the last thing I would say is the worst thing that you can do is do nothing. Like doing anything at all, taking some small steps and just starting is going to put you at an advantage. And so I think we see a lot of businesses that are overthinking it or trying to take on too much at once. I know I heard a stat recently of what % of AI initiatives are failing for businesses. And I think that comes down to trying to make AI into a much larger initiative than the business is ready for. So start small and think about where your data resides, how clean it is. I think those two things will go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I would add probably just on the podcast we talk a lot, and a lot of this wasn't intentional, but with all the guests we've had over the last few years on the podcast, the idea of mapping your processes manually before you get overwhelmed with any kind of technology, I think still is probably some of the best advice I could give any leader of any team or any company, which is, do an audit of your processes today and see where there might be opportunities to make changes, whether those changes are because of changes in technology without AI, but then potentially also changes with AI, where AI can start to assist those processes and make them better. And then of course then once you've done that manually, you can then go and have smart people go and figure out exactly how to build the micro solutions into those processes, so that at the end of the day you have a functioning process. But even that is never done, right? This is just where to get started, but you probably need to do that now I'm guessing for the future, however long that's going to be, you're going to be doing this on a monthly or at least quarterly basis, and then eventually you're going to have AI doing that for you, and then obviously with someone checking to make sure that it makes sense before they confirm and pull the trigger and make the changes. But I think that's to me has always been some of the best advice that we've had on the podcast from leaders who've scaled companies successfully, be it because of technology or other things. Is just map your processes manually, and then that'll tell you where there's potential opportunity in CRM and AI to help you be more efficient.
Mhm. Yeah, it is interesting. A lot of the AI and everything is kind of taking us back to basics in a lot of ways, and that this is just reinforcing.
That is so
Reinforcing
true. Yeah, yeah.
Sophie, can I add one thing
Of
to
course, yeah.
this conversation about where to start and everything? I think the more back to my day one analogy or, connection to all of this in the beginning is the more that businesses can operate like engineering firms where we create an MVP, a minimum viable product when we want to test something. We test it, we get feedback, we iterate, and we have a pretty agile process to do that, starting small, like Emily said, like that continuous testing, because a lot of these things are not going to work. And so we have to know, okay, not everything's going to work, but it's still worth doing these things because we're going to learn in the process, and that's going to make version 2 or version 3, so much better. And in this day one Amazon methodology, they talk about door one decisions versus door two, or one way door versus a two-way door. So one-way door, those decisions we do need to take time before we go down them, because once we go through the door, there's significant consequences or requires a big investment. But a two-way door, we can go through it and we can come back if it doesn't work. So knowing up front before we are going to do something, is this a one-way door or a two-way door? The two-way doors, those decisions shouldn't require a lot of approvals. Like you want the more people empowered to make those types of fast decisions, the better.
Mm.
Yeah, I think too, Kristin, that's possible even without getting into AI. Obviously, HubSpot has AI embedded everywhere, but I think one of the biggest wins from Inbound was how the releases make it easier for people to use HubSpot in the right way from day one, right? Again, AI has been embedded in there, but that's not a big AI decision. Features like customizable deal pipelines, automated territory management, they actually help sales teams work the way they actually work, which speeds up the adoption and builds clean, reliable data right out of the gate. Once you have that, now we get to the loop, right? Then once the basics are in place, you can naturally move into the next phases, like Kristin is saying, and you can iterate next phases of optimization using HubSpot's, new intelligence features to scale the high value work, like predictive lead scoring and AI-driven nurture loops and things like that. So I think we can start with the fundamentals, and HubSpot has made improvements in those fundamentals. We can then iterate with these naturally embedded things. So we don't have to take it as a different initiative. We can just take a look at our HubSpot, and once we go through that door, it doesn't mean we don't have that two-way door and we can't come back. So this gives you, gets you live, gets you working in what's available today. New features help you evolve, and it builds on the foundation. So you're continuing the improvement, right? Continuous optimization, as Kristin said, stay agile, as Kristin said, and drive that stronger ROI without having to take on some ancillary AI product.
Mhm. I love that. I know we're getting close to time here, so I'm going to kind of wrap us up with one last question, and we want to keep it really actionable for people. So let's say people are listening today, they've got 30 minutes tomorrow morning, they can take action on one of the things we discussed. What would you recommend for them to do first? Kristin, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So there was a tool that HubSpot, I think it's been launched for a little bit, but they officially launched it at Inbound, and it's called the AEO grader. So they shared a lot of data about, I think marketing in general marketing teams in general over the last year have been struggling to get the same results that they've had in the past. And organic search is down overall amongst, based on research. And the reason is because so many people are using AI to actually do their searches to begin with. And so we all as businesses want to make sure that we're found when our prospects are using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever to find businesses that are, our prospective clients. And so making sure that we're found, this AEO grader tells you how you rank against your competitors and gives you recommendations and actionable steps on how you can more likely be found in AI through the content that you're publishing.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's fun to run over time too and see how things change, and they kind of keep changing that a little bit. So yeah, it helps give you new recommendations to lean into. Sam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think if I were waking up tomorrow morning, I'd pick one growth blocker and I'd go after it. And then I'd figure out how is HubSpot going to help me get to a quick win? And if you don't have an answer to that question, I'm going to make a shameless plug here and say, call Denamico. We'll help you figure that out.
She wouldn't be a salesperson if she didn't.
Yeah, well, and it's our webinar, so we can do that.
All right, Emily or Brendon, go ahead.
Take it away,
I'll
Emily.
go next. I'll go next so that Brendon can wrap us up because he's guaranteed to have something more insightful to end on than me. I'll take a sales focus because I think Kristin just gave a really good recommendation that leans into a little bit more of a marketing mentality. Like, how do we make sure that we're being found by AI and evolution of SEO? If you haven't looked at the sales workspace, go take a look at it. There's a lot of really cool tools in there that will help you prep for your day. So if you're starting off your day 8, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, whatever time it may be, open it up, take a look at some of the it'll basically walk through here's what meetings you have, and it will help you prep for those meetings. You can use Breeze Assistant to even ask questions like, again, going into a connect call with a new prospect, prepare me a list of questions. So there's a lot of really powerful tools in there, and be a great one to check out when you're starting your day tomorrow if you haven't already.
Yeah, that's really good. I guess mine's going to be sort of building on what Sam was saying, which is, whatever that blocker is that you decide tomorrow morning to tackle first, this is like everything else that you do for the first time, that we've already touched on this a few times. It's taking those use cases in your business that are currently opportunities or challenges or obstacles, and finding a tool that's going to help you overcome that. And by doing so, by actually using a tool, by the time you're done, you're going to have other ideas of how to use a different tool the next time and how to do it faster and better, and of course, and then share that with your teammates. So I think that's one of the other benefits of starting with like this very specific use case, doing it, and then you learn in the process. So that would be my advice. What I like about it, it's a great combination of, it's a very tactical way to get started, but it becomes strategic because you're actually teaching yourself how to use these tools by using one. When you use the second and the third, it'll be that much easier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to our panel for joining us. Thanks to everyone who was here with us today. I think a big takeaway here is just get started with some of these things. Don't let it be intimidating. Don't get overwhelmed by the fact that there's hundreds of new things. There is something here for everyone, but not everything needs to be done today. And think about it from your problem and goal perspective. And I think if you're doing this on your own, it works for you. If you're partnering with Denamico, don't feel like you need to know all 200 things, right? Just bring the issues that you're struggling with, the problems that you're trying to solve, and we can kind of help walk through through these lenses that we were talking about, and then kind of bring the product up behind. But we always want to start with you and with your business and what you're trying to solve first before we bring in all these new features. So if that's something that you want help with, you can reach out to Sam or Emily, whoever your client growth strategist is. Brendon and Kristin are always willing to have these conversations as well. So you'll get the recording, you'll get some information. I'll be sure to link some of the things that we talked about, the AEO grader and things like that, so you can look those up yourself. And then everyone's calendar link. And if you're watching this afterwards, we'll have all that in the description as well. So
Yeah. So Sophie, can I just maybe share one thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier?
yeah.
So a question that's come up a lot this year is, why weren't more businesses getting ahead of this AI thing in 2025? And one of the realizations that I came to was that in 2024, it didn't seem as that there was really worth including a budget in your planning for 2025. But I'm guessing that with all the incredible things that have happened in moving AI forward this year, whether you're in the HubSpot ecosystem or not, if you're currently in the middle of a strategic planning and then budgeting for 2026, whatever you do, make sure that someone in your company is including a budget for incorporating AI and the change related to AI that's going to impact your business in 2026 and beyond.
That is a great point. That's a great point to leave with. Does anyone else have anything I didn't ask that you want to chime in on in our last couple minutes here?
I would just say thank you. I mean, this was a webinar we did for clients to, try and bring you first some of the insights and learnings that we had from Inbound. And so just thank everyone who attended and registered for being a client. And if this is something, these types of webinars are helpful, let us know so that we can, or if there's something else, another suggestion that you have, we'd love to know what that is so that we can bring more value.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.